We want everyone to feel safe and included and welcome. But the first step to that is making them feel intensely uncomfortable and that their parents may have lied to them. Yeah, sounds really logical. Does anyone even think about these things? You know what we don't talk about enough? How kids might feel dealing with any of the stuff that's going on in schools right now. I'm not even talking about the COVID stuff. Let's leave that out of the conversation. Masks and shots and things like that. Just the straight up fear of being sick or getting one of your relatives sick or even, being quarantined for 14 days repeatedly. Having to do things in school that you don't know how to do because you missed so much school and the online learning wasn't really great. Let's leave that all out of the conversation. I'm not even going to touch that. I think most people, regardless of where you stand politically, can wrap their minds around that being uncomfortable. Like most of the things to do with it, and really only the extreme are like, they're fine. Everything's great. They're doing just fine. They like wearing the mask. Okay, so let's just leave that out of it. I'm talking instead about lessons like, what's your race? Let's talk about it when you're 6. And what pronouns would you like to use? What's a pronoun? I don't know English grammar. I don't know how to read yet. What's a pronoun? Well, those are never mind. Do you want to go by he or her or she? Why are you asking me? I'm 6. Well, let's introduce you to the gender unicorn or giraffe or gingerbread creature. Whatever it is. Let's take you, little person, brand new on planet Earth, and let's begin the long, slow, painful process of completely fracturing and dismantling everything you thought you knew about yourself and your place in the world and the world itself, so we can build all that back up in a brand new way that may or may not in any way, shape, or form conform to reality. Either reality or the reality in which you live in your home with your family and so forth. So when we tell you that you may not be the gender to which you were assigned at birth, that your parents assigned that to you. We use the word like assign, and then we have to define the word assigned because a 6-year-old might be like, what do you mean assigned? I don't know what you mean. Is that like assigning homework? I'm not even sure they'd know that. So now we've got to explain the word assigned. Do you think that's comfortable? And after we get through that, we have to ignore the fact that the child might be wondering, why would mom and dad not tell me the truth about whether I'm a boy or a girl? Why would they just assign one? And why doesn't it match what I have down there? Because that's what they told me. And maybe the child will go home and say something, and maybe they won't because they're embarrassed, because it's a rare kid that wants to have that conversation in the first place. Never mind with strangers and their friends when they're 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 or any of those ages. Really, it's pretty personal. But we haven't even learned the alphabet yet in many cases. Not all. Some kids learn it at home before they go to school. But, let's say for the sake of argument, they're just beginning to learn that whole thing about reading and, numbers and what they mean and everything. And we're busy introducing dozens of different new ways to describe themselves they never heard of before that completely contradict what mom and dad have told them for the short little time span they've been on the planet. And yes, it creates discomfort. But we're not thinking about that because apparently discomfort is good. We need 6 and 7-year-olds to be uncomfortable at school because we want them to feel safe. Does that make sense to you? That first we make them feel uncomfortable so they can feel safe? We want everyone to feel safe and included and welcome. But the first step to that is making them feel intensely uncomfortable and that their parents may have lied to them. Yeah, sounds really logical. Does anyone even think about these things? Or do they just plow straight ahead with, we need to do this so we can help everyone feel comfortable and safe? Because that's all I ever hear. And if you say, well, I think it's going to make my child uncomfortable, is that because your child is homophobic because you're homophobic? Is that because your child is a bigot? Is that because you are a bigot? Is that because you are teaching them wrong think? No, It's because my child is brand new on planet Earth, and the only experiences they've had have been at home with family or in a small daycare or with grandma. And they've just been told they're a boy or a girl their entire short existence on the planet, and they don't really know any different because we don't talk about this at home because we don't agree with it. Scientists don't agree with it. Lots of doctors don't agree with it. It is really up for discussion. I realize you, the school, have decided it's fact, but maybe we don't agree. And since when did it become the role of the school to change my child's beliefs about reality? I thought it was your job to teach them how to read, the alphabet. Not the one that has LGBTQIA in a row, but like the 26 letters of the alphabet and the sounds they make, phonics. But we don't think about that. Or like I said, if we do, it's okay for them to be uncomfortable because that's the beginning of growth. We don't need to knock you down, make you really uncomfortable. And then what? What happens when you're uncomfortable as an adult? If you go to a new job, is the first thing the HR department does make you uncomfortable? Is that what they do? Welcome to your new job. We're so happy to have you. We want you to feel welcome and included. So we're going to begin to tear apart your identity and tell you all the new ways you need to think of yourself in order for you to feel included here. Makes sense, right? Because actually, it's not really about you. It's about everybody else. We want to make sure everybody else but you feels included. We say the same thing to everybody, by the way. So really, nobody should feel included until everybody feels included, which means we have to first tear down who you are and replace that with who we think you ought to be or ought to describe yourself as or whatever. And what are your pronouns? So we can include that on your business card. If they did that to you as you walked into a new job, how comfortable would you feel? Would you feel like you had to reorganize your beliefs about reality just to fit in? And you're an adult. The only way you'd feel comfortable is if you already thought all that stuff and already agreed with it. And we can safely assume it's a rare 6-year-old that does. Because it's a rare family that does. And even if there are people who have raised their kids that way already before the age of 6, shouldn't it be their choice to send them to a school where that's what they do, and it shouldn't be the standard public thing where all the kids are treated the way maybe a tiny percentage of people want to treat their kids? Because I can assure you it's a really tiny minority of people who are raising their children to be gender neutral until they decide, on their own in kindergarten or whatever, with the teacher who's a person you don't know and they don't know and you really know nothing about, right? So maybe we could start thinking about children and who they are and what they are on this planet, which is new, brand new. And maybe we should start questioning the wisdom of dismantling what they've learned at home, dismantling their identity so it can be built back up the way the school thinks it should be. Maybe we should question the wisdom of assuming the worst about the child's parents and upbringing. Maybe we should question the wisdom of constantly harping on immutable characteristics like race and gender and sexuality and things like that when they're trying to learn. Maybe we should question the wisdom of making people uncomfortable before they can learn. Do you learn and retain information very well when you're feeling threatened? That's the dominant culture which we need to dismantle. You're from the dominant culture, so that's bad. And let's flip it around. Okay, you're not on that side. You're not being made to feel bad and struggle because you're in the dominant culture that we need to dismantle and tear apart. You are being made uncomfortable by virtue of being labeled a victim and told that you should be afraid, very, very, very afraid. And that if those people on the other side of the room who don't look like you, don't get their act in gear and don't figure it out and don't become anti-racist enough, bad things are going to happen. You need to fight. Better get prepared to fight. Better get good and conscious, awake, look around, notice the racism, call it out, use your voice, little 6-year-old. Definitely insert yourself into conflicts. Create conflicts, in fact, because that's how we get rid of racism. Create racial conflict so we can get rid of racism. And you're 6. Even if you're 10, even if you're 15, is that going to help you make good friends? You're going to have healthy relationships? What is your dominant emotion going to be every day when you set foot in school? It's going to be joy, excitement, and curiosity about all the new fun things you're going to learn. Or is it going to be hypervigilance, fear, anxiety, anger. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but I doubt it. I remember being a child. Let's talk about sex for a minute, shall we? Because remember, these are little kids. These are the ones that go, ew, icky. Ew. They see mom and dad kissing. They're like, oh, no, gross. Stop. Thinking about sex is like not on their radar. But we not only force them to think about it at very young ages, but we force them to talk about it using explicit and medically accurate terms in front of the whole class. We even have teachers in some classes who are openly discussing their own sexuality, their queerness, the fact that they're trans, their body parts with small children. They're putting books in the library that have explicit illustrations of girls using toys that make them more like boys and then having sexual interactions with them as young as middle school. And that may well be the first or most explicit exposure they have to anything related to sex. Certainly far from the beautiful, intimate, love-affirming activity that it ought to be in a committed relationship. It's even far removed from the healthy, fun, adult consensual activity that adults might engage in outside of committed relationships. So that's their first experience is like really graphic. Is the ick factor to the 10th level if you are that kid, because that's where their minds are at. You can say that kids think about sex all the time. Not quite like that. No, they don't. It's very fuzzy and kind of foggy. And maybe it comes out of, kissing, hugging, things like that. No, they're not really getting into the nitty-gritty details until adults are forcing it on them. And we don't stop and think about how that in and of itself might traumatize them or give them an impression that it is something that makes them uncomfortable. If their first feeling about sex is, ugh, and that's just amplified day after day after day, discussion after discussion across reading a whole book in class and discussing it with their peers, how do you get rid of that feeling? Are they really learning any good lessons about sex? Or are they just coming away with that uncomfortable, ew feeling? Well, I submit you don't know because nobody's even talking about it. Nobody's even thinking about it except parents. Parents are concerned, but not teachers, not educators. I don't see a whole lot of conversation about, should we be doing this? I mean, it wasn't done to us. Are we really worse off? Are we really so much worse off as adults now because they weren't showing us graphic porn in 6th grade? Are we really so much worse off because they weren't asking us about our pronouns? Did you feel left out? Did you feel excluded? Did you feel unloved and uncared about? Was learning to read and do math harder for you because nobody asked you your pronouns? No, me either. No. In fact, most adults I speak to over the age of 40 are just baffled because all the discomfort we felt in school was coming from pretty organic places. Disputes with our peers, having to work really hard, getting a bad grade, having to bring that bad grade home and deal with our parents, not doing our homework, being late for class, forgetting our pencils, things that are pretty developmentally appropriate for us to cope with and deal with. But now we're taking a 6-year-old and saying, hi, deal with adult levels of discomfort about who you are on planet Earth when you just got here. Don't you feel loved and included? I hope I'm making my point. We need to talk about this because the thing they claim is helping our kids adjust socially, emotionally, so they can learn, I believe is having the exact opposite impact and is making our kids sick, like mentally ill. And I really want it to stop, but it's not going to stop because we're spending billions of dollars on it. And as long as parents are walking around going, social emotional learning, it sounds good, right? Like it helps them cope with stress, whatever. No, it is making them stressed. And then the argument is that in so doing and overcoming the stress we're putting on them, they'll learn better what we want them to learn. Is that what you want them to learn, mom and dad? Do you want their identity just fractured into tiny little pieces and then some total stranger gluing them back together again? Was that your plan when you sent them to school? Wasn't mine. So I think we need to talk about this stuff, guys. just putting it out there. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, if you find these questions valuable, let me know. So you can do that by subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing the video, joining my locals community. We can talk about it in more depth. But this is bugging me a lot because, as I said, I remember being a kid, and I'm not sure I would have made it through the 6th grade if I'd had to go through most of this garbage. So just my 2 cents. Have a great day.